Hi there, Robert Banks, co-founder BuildDirect. I want to talk to you today about buying solid hardwood flooring. So consider this your solid hardwood flooring buyer's guide. This is going to be, I'm going to make some references to the BuildDirect offering, but really the majority of this is no matter who you buy your hardwood flooring from, this should help you through the process. So I'm going to make a few assumptions throughout this video. Assumption number one is you know what species you already want to buy. So I'm not going to explain to you the difference between oak and maple and Brazilian cherry or all the different species available for you. I'm going to assume you already know that. I'm also going to assume that you understand that hardwood flooring comes in different grades. Okay, and those are visual references. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but really that's an assumption that you understand that a select and better floor is going to be different than a common one or builder's grade type floor. Okay, and I'm also going to assume that you just understand the general visual characteristics of the room that you want. Do you want something with lots of knots, or do you want a really clear floor? And finally, you have an understanding of your budget. Okay, if you think that you're going to spend 50 cents a square foot and get a great solid hardwood floor, you're probably a little bit off the mark because that's just not a budget that's appropriate for a hardwood floor. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you have the budget for a hardwood floor. And now let's take you through the steps of this buying guide and see if we can help you make the right decision. So one of the key areas you're going to look at in the buying guide of solid hardwood is what we call character. Okay, what's the character of the floor? Whether that's the species or the grade. Do you like a really nice, clean, clear floor? Or do you like something with a lot of character? Which character refers to things like knots or mineral streaks or color variation, and really gives a more of a rustic or cabin feel out in the wilderness rather than a really clean modern line look. So character is one aspect of the buying guide that you're really going to have to spend some time on, understanding what fits your needs, what fits your room's needs, and really what is the overall visual look you're trying to accomplish with this floor. Another thing you're going to have to understand is what we call dimensions. Okay, so that's going to be the length of the board and it's going to be the width of the board. Okay, so if you want a really long average length, things that are 4, 5, 6, 7 feet long, okay, you're going to get one of the more premier grades or standard grade. You want to get a higher grade that affords you longer lengths. Okay. On the flip side, if you go to kind of utility builder's grade, those tend to have a little bit shorter lengths, and it's a different flow to the room when you have shorter lengths as compared to longer lengths. Somewhat similarly is the width of the board. Okay, that dimension, and that could be 2 1/4, 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches, 6 inches, 7 inches, 8 inches wide, right? And a wide plank floor has a different visual than a 2 1/4 floor. So those are things that you're going to have to make sure that fits your style and the aesthetics of what you're trying to accomplish within the rooms that you're installing this floor. Another key aspect to your buying decision is going to be on color and what we call photosensitivity. Okay, so what that means, photosensitivity, is this is a natural product. So over time, it may darken or lighten depending on the species that you have and maybe depending on the exposure to natural sunlight. So a lot of exotic species, for instance, will darken over time. If that's a concern to you, then because this is a decision you're making 5, 10, 15, 20 years out, you want your floor that you're going to invest in today to look the same 20 years from now, you may consider a stained product. Okay, because stained product tends to be more consistent, so it looks the same today as it would years down the road. If you love the characteristics and natural beauty of a wooden floor, then you don't mind so much that over time your floor may darken or lighten depending on the species that you have. So color and photosensitivity are aspects that you also have to include in your buying decision. When buying a hardwood floor, surface hardness is something you also need to factor into. What is this room environment going to be for? Is this a residential application or is it a commercial application? Do you have big pets, big dogs running around? Do you have a lot of children that are going to bash toys around? Or is this going to be more adult living, a lounge or an office space that's going to have very little traffic? These are things you need to factor into your decision when buying a hardwood floor. So there's varying degrees and big ranges on the hardness of the floor. And again, you need to factor in what this environment's going to look like when you make that decision on which species and which product you're choosing for your environment. So these points are hopefully helpful to you in your buying process, right? This buyer's guide for a solid hardwood floor. We've hit things like the character of the floor, the dimensions, the width and the length of the floor that you desire, the color, photosensitivity aspects of the species that you may be choosing, and the overall hardness of the floor. So remember at the beginning of the video we talked about certain assumptions, pricing, and just your overall aesthetic flow and look of the floor that you need to have, and then those buyer's guide points to make sure that whether you're buying the product from BuildDirect or from someone else, you really need to ask yourself these questions when you're going in, because there's so many different options available to you in the marketplace. So I hope this helped. Please, whether come to our website or give us a call or do any other research out there, I hope this video helped you make a decision on buying a solid hardwood floor. I'm Robert Banks, co-founder BuildDirect. Please have a great day.